everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Cedric Black podcast. And I'm your host for this episode, and every episode, I am Cedric Black, as you may have guessed by now. And also, as you can probably hear in my voice, I'm getting over, I don't know if it's another cold. I believe it's just allergies. And I've never had this struggle before, but for some reason, for the past couple of years, it's been a constant thing now. When the weather changes, it just really affects me more now. I used to be able to fight it off, but I guess that's just what happens. That's life. And as time goes on, as we get older, these things happen, and I guess it's just part of it. It's okay. It could definitely be worse. And it doesn't really affect me physically, it's just in my voice. I mean, there was a couple of nights where it was hard to sleep. I couldn't get any air rotating or flowing through my nose. And it always happened at nighttime when I'm trying to sleep. And I don't know if any of you even have to deal with this or have dealt with this, but trying to sleep and having to breathe through your mouth is really tough when you can't get any airflow in your nose because your mouth gets dry. You just can't sleep. For me, I couldn't do it. It was a struggle. That's it. I just give you a heads up on my voice. If it sounds funny, that is why. So I do apologize if it's bothersome for some of you, but that's what's going on. In case you couldn't tell. So welcome back to another episode. Now that I got that part out of the way, I probably didn't even need to share it with you, but I just wanted to let you know in case I did sound funny and my voice goes in and out like it's doing now. This week is different. I say that every week that this is a different topic, but this week is really different because this is a celebratory episode. This is in honor of my first book. I haven't mentioned this before. If you've seen, I don't know if you see some of the things that I post on social media. If you do, you already know that I've been posting some things along the way about the book that I've been writing or that I did write. But I haven't never mentioned it on the podcast because I wanted to make sure that my focus was directly on the podcast and bringing you information about noise pollution and its impact. But my book is about that. The title of my book is called Unheard Impact, Noise Pollution, and Your Mental Well-Being. That's the title of the book. And the book is merely an extension of the podcast. Or it could be vice versa. It's an extension of the podcast and my social media posts that I make because it's all about noise and the impact that it has on us. So I've been writing a book, done a lot of research for the past year. So I guess it took me about close to a year to get it together and write it down and get my thoughts together and get all the facts together and put it into a format to where I could get it formatted as a book. This was definitely a new journey for me because I've never done something like this. If you know me or if you've followed anything that I've been talking about on this podcast or my other podcast, the Sound Creator podcast, which I no longer do, just totally right now dedicated to the noise pollution podcast. But by trade, my career and my skill is in music. That's my job. My main job is music composition and sound design. But I never talk about it on the podcast because that's not what the podcast is about. And so I keep those things separate. But I do integrate them at some point, and I have with the work that I do. I do integrate it into my work, but just not part of the podcast. Podcast is strictly about noise pollution and bringing you facts and tips and knowledge about noise and the way that it impacts our mental health and the way that it does affect the way that we feel. And that's what the book is about, Unheard Impact. It's not a long book. It's a short book. It's about 100 pages. I have two versions of the book. I have a digital version of the book. It's an ebook, which is available through my website. The digital version is available directly through my website. And I also have a companion guide that that comes along with the book. It's available as a separate book, but it's also available as a bundle along with a musical CD that I bundle as a price that I have set for it. The book itself is in digital format on my website, cedricblack.com, but also it's in paperback format through Barnes and Noble. So if you are one of those like me, I prefer a paperback book. You can go to Barnes and Noble and check it out if you so desire. It's available at Barnes and Noble. It's available in two options, as a matter of fact. One is a full color book with pictures and other illustrations, and the other is just plain text, just black and white text with no pictures. So you have two options there for paperback. And on the website, the digital ebook. And I'll also forgot to mention that if you have an e-reader, Barnes and Noble has the ebook for their Nook e-reader. So if you have that, if you prefer that, it's also available as an ebook through Barnes and Noble. On the website, it's a digital version of the book, and it's the full color version of the book, as well as the companion guide that comes along with the book. And the companion guide is full of tools and checklists to better help you understand your awareness of noise pollution. It helps you understand the book better as well. The book alone by itself, I feel, is great information, not just because I wrote it and I'm partial to it. I believe that it's just really important information because it's things that I wasn't even aware of. We hear it, but we don't pay attention to noise. And we definitely do not pay attention to how it affects us because we've become so accustomed to it. Like someone told me before, it doesn't bother me because I can tune it out. Some things you can tune out, but it definitely has an impact on us. It has an impact on us in many ways. Because one of my friends and I were talking about noise the other day. I challenged him to name anything, name any noise. You can pick any sound, and I can tell you how it impacts us, how it could impact you in a negative way, how it can impact your feelings. So he had to think for a minute, and I challenged him. I said, think about it. Think deep as you want. Pick any sound. It doesn't matter. Any sound. So he picked silence, no sound. I said, it doesn't matter what you pick because I can show you how even silence can have an impact on how you feel. This is what I told him. If you are in a room and if you're visiting, not any room, just a hospital room, and you're visiting someone that's really sick, what do you hear in the room? You hear the machines beeping. You hear whatever is attached to the person. This is just an example of the noise that you hear. So I told him when you're in the room and you're listening to someone, where you're visiting and you hear all the machines going, and you hear the beep, it's a heart monitor or something that's beeping. If this is someone that you care about, you're visiting them anyway. That's why you're there, because you care about the person. Now, if you hear the beep, you hear beep, beep, beep all the time. Now, if that beeping stops and it goes silent, how do you feel? How's that going to make you feel? And I let him think for a second. I said, think about it. If that beep, as long as that beeping is going, you feel some sense of hope, or you feel some sense of they're okay, or they're going to get better. But if that machine stops, you immediately go into panic. The first thing you want to do is call someone, say, hey, something's wrong. Your heart may start racing. It may speed up. Blood pressure may rise. Your worry sets in. All these emotions come into play. That for that particular situation, if it goes silent, it makes you feel a certain way. Now, as long as the noise is going, you feel fine. You don't think anything of it. That was just one example that I wanted to give him on how even silence can affect us. But mostly it's about noise. The book itself and this podcast is about noise, the things that we hear that we don't want, the things that disturb our peace in some way. Silence doesn't really disturb our peace in any way. It can, but it's not what we hear. We're hearing the sounds of lawnmowers or traffic, loud music, loud restaurants. Those things are the ones that disturb our peace in some way. And again, the book gives us a lot more in-depth information. Not really more, well, yeah, more than what I give in the podcast, because each podcast is different. And the podcast is not a 4 hour long podcast where I'm just diving deep the way I dive into with the book. So the podcast is pieces here and there. I don't know of anyone that does a 5 hour podcast. There's probably a 4 hour video on YouTube or something, or a 3 hour podcast video. But I personally can't listen to a podcast that would be 5 hours long. So there's no way that my voice would even hold up for 5 hours or 4 hours or even 1 hour straight. I would definitely take breaks, and you would know it because it would be different every time. But that's what this episode, I'm not really going into I'm not really going into noise pollution, the topic. I just announcing the book. If you're a reader, if you're interested in it, please check it out. It's a book about awareness. I want to bring awareness to you guys in every way that I can. I do it through the podcast, and I do it through social media. I do it through music and the clients that I work. Now I'm doing it through book. Maybe another book, who knows? But right now, this is the first book. I'm excited about it. I'm nervous about how it would be received. But at the same time, I'm not nervous because I'm not doing it to be a bestseller. I'm doing it to spread awareness, to help. And the more I was writing it, the more I felt good about what I was doing because of the impact that I believe it could have on just one person. If one person read my book and you say that, hey, your book helped me out a lot, that's all I want. I'm great. I'm done. I don't have to have 1,000 people or 10,000 people, that bought my book. And that would be great if you buy the book. But even if someone doesn't, if one person reads my book, even if you don't want to buy it, you can just email me, send me a message and say, I don't want to buy your book, but I want to read it. I'll send it to you. I'll personally, and that's a guaranteed promise. If you don't want to buy my book, and you don't have to, but you want to read it, I'll send it to you. I'll send you I have the digital files. I'll email it to you. You send me your email address and just put that in the message and say, just send me your book. I will send it to you. No problems. I just want you to read it. I just want you to gain something, just like this podcast. It's a small podcast. It's not that popular. I'm not trying to be a podcaster, a professional podcaster. I'm using this podcast as a platform to spread awareness on something that I believe is really important to us. same as I'm doing with my social media and through my book. So there you have it. That's it for this week. If you have a chance, check out my book, Unheard Impact, Noise Pollution and Your Mental Well-Being. It's available on my website, cedricblack.com, and also in paperback through Barnes & Noble. And if you prefer Barnes & Noble, if you want the book in paperback, be aware that you're ordering directly from Barnes & Noble and not from me. I'm not affiliated with Barnes & Noble and their shipping procedures. I just know that it takes a few days for them to print the book. I did a test run and it took a few days. I just ordered some more copies and they sent me an email yesterday and said that it was being shipped. So shipping may take a few days, so just be prepared. But they have their information about shipping on there that you can read. So thanks for showing up and listening to me talk about the new book. See you next week.